What does a camera and an LMG have in common? Sometimes you need stabilization. Hey, what's up you guys? Nick here. For those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Nick. I'm a professional photographer. I've been shooting professionally for the last 3 years, though I've had a camera in my hand for the last 16, as I have been shooting as a hobbyist since high school. In that time, I have shot portrait, weddings, engagements, senior photos, landscape, cityscape, night photography, a little bit of everything, and there's one thing that I have learned in all of that shooting is sometimes you need stabilization. So we are going to start a new series, you guys, and this series is going to be about equipment for beginning photographers. I'm on a lot of photography forums and Facebook pages, and they range from beginners to experts and professionals. And one thing that I see a lot on the beginner side is people asking what kind of equipment they need to start shooting professionally or what they need to start shooting better photos. So we're going to address that in this next series of videos. And today we're going to talk about stabilization, or the tripod. What do you need a tripod for? In my personal opinion, I don't care what you're shooting, you need a tripod. So I was just sitting down editing and I need to clarify something. Not every shoot requires a tripod. As you can tell from the wobbliness, I'm actually holding my DSLR in my hand without a tripod. What I was getting at is, no matter what type of photography you shoot, you should have a tripod for certain circumstances. Not every shoot requires a tripod, but it's really, really good to have one along for the ride. So that's my message to you, since I was just editing and realized that I didn't clarify. I just said, no matter what you shoot, you need a tripod, and I sounded completely ridiculous. So back to you, other Nick. Bye. If you're shooting portraits, wedding, or people, you need a tripod for when you're in low light settings. And the reason for that is, as we've discussed in our shutter speed video, which I will link right there, is when you're shooting at a lower shutter speed, and we talked about this a little bit, but when your shutter speed is lower than the length of your lens. So if you're shooting at 1/50th of a second on a 50mm camera, that's the lowest you can go before the movements of your hands start to show up in the photo, and it makes things blurry, out of focus. It won't take a really sharp, crisp photo. So if you're shooting indoors like a wedding, or you know, an engagement, or you know, like an event of some sort, a tripod is really handy to have so you can shoot at a lower speed and get as much light to your sensor as possible while still getting those sharp, crisp photos. Without a tripod, you're gonna be at the mercy of your shutter speed. You can only jack your ISO up so high before you start getting really, really noisy photos, and they're real spotted, and no one really wants that. And that's the importance of a tripod when you're doing work with clients. Now, if you're doing landscape photography, it's the same kind of thing. You're trying to keep the camera stable while you take your photos, but it's a little bit different because you could be shooting on a really bright, sunny day. Let's say you want to use a neutral density filter. It's going to lower you down a few stops to really get everything in frame. As we discussed in our f-stop video, which I will link right there, you need to have your f-stop really, really high number or really, really little tiny opening. And what that's going to do is that's going to take light away from your sensor, and because of the exposure triangle, you have to find a way to compensate for that. And a lot of times you compensate that with shutter speed. You slow your shutter speed down, that way you get more light into your sensor or your film if you're shooting with film. But the trade-off with that is, once you hit that below your camera length kind of shutter speed, you're going to start getting blurs, you're going to start getting movements unless you're using a tripod. And that's the importance of a tripod. Now, I personally think that tripods are extremely important for everyone to have. So what kind of tripod is right for you? Now, tripods come in a lot of different forms and a lot of different price ranges. The one that I'm shooting on right here, this is the one that I use pretty much for all my videos, is just like a $12 Amazon Basics, and we'll do a full review video on that later this week. But It's really, really cheap. It provides enough stability unless I'm using a larger lens. So if I'm using a heavier lens like this Sigma telescoping lens, it starts to get a little bit front heavy and it starts to make the camera wobble because the Amazon's basic tripod is really cheap. It's really lightweight. It's great for hiking and backpacking, which I've discussed in earlier videos, but it's not really a stable. Here, I'm gonna tap it with my foot and you'll see what I mean. Look at all that wobble. Like, and see how it continues to wobble after that? Yeah, no, that is, that's not what you want out of your tripod. This is great for what I'm using it for here, or as a backpacking kind of hiking, we're going on a trip kind of tripod, but it is not the main tripod I would use for landscape photography or if I'm shooting outside. This is a great indoor tripod or kind of a last minute ditch tripod because it doesn't have the stability of a more heavier duty one, like that wooden tripod behind me with the large format camera on it. So the reason I say that I wouldn't use the Amazon Basics, this really, really cheap one for outdoor photography if I had the choice. So if I don't need to worry about keeping my load really light, or I don't need to worry about how much space I have to pack, I'll actually pack my bigger tripod right here for outdoor photography because it has a hook on the bottom. This hook is extremely important because when you set up the tripod, you can hang a weight from this hook right there, allowing you to create more stability and to keep your camera from being too top heavy and wanting to fall. So one of the things you want to look at is what kind of photography are you going to be doing? Now this Amazon Basics tripod right over here that I just showed you with the hook was about $30 or $40. It's not a really expensive tripod, but it does have the hook. It's a lot more heavy duty and it has a lot more range of motion. This one only goes up to about, let's say 4.5 feet high in total, which really isn't that high, but again is great for those kind of emergency or I need to be careful how much I pack kind of trips, and it's fantastic for shooting these videos because I'm not very tall, so when I sit down, that tripod right there sits too high and I look like I'm looking up at the camera like I am a child. Now on the other side of that we have this large format one right here. This is a really heavy duty wood one. Wooden tripods are extremely expensive, but they're extremely sturdy. I got that one on eBay for probably $400 or $500, and it has a different style of head, and we'll discuss tripod heads in another video because that is an entirely different breakdown, and I need to do a little bit more research on it because I don't know. I know of like the two types of tripod heads, which is the ball head and the crazy pivot head thing. So I don't know a ton about the different heads, but we can talk about the two head styles that I know in another video. Now, if you're doing indoor photography shoots or you're working in a studio, it's really important to have a tripod for the low light work. You don't want to have a bunch of bright lights. So this photo right here of Bailey, we needed a tripod for that because we were doing long exposure work. And when we did this video that I will link right up here with Jessica with the black light, which is a really early video of mine, the tripod was extremely important for that because again, we were doing long exposure work. So if you want to work in night photography, if you want to get photos of the comet, or you want to do those really cool, those light streak photos that we are going to do a video up in the next coming weeks. I'm waiting for the right night to do it. You really want a tripod for that because, I mean, I had an ex-girlfriend once who would just set her camera on the car, push the button, and the photos they came out cool, but you could see where she had pressed the button and you could see a little bit of blur and a little bit of movement because it was pivoting on the hood of the car. The tripod actually latches onto the bottom of the camera and holds it nice and stable, so you don't have to worry about having that pivot or any movement. Now, one thing to consider when you are buying a tripod is your budget. Like I said, a lot of what I'm seeing is from beginner photographers, and when you're first getting into photography, you don't usually have a big budget. I do like both of these Amazon Basics tripods. They've worked really, really well for me. I would like to get a nice ball head DSLR one, just so I have a little more stability and they weigh a little bit less, but we'll discuss that in the reviews I do for these tripods here. If you're doing indoor photography, this Amazon Basics, this real cheap one, would be perfect for that when you're getting started out. And the reason for that is you're not worrying about wind, you're not worrying about it being too top heavy. If your studio is smaller, you're going to be using smaller lenses that are less top heavy than the Sigma that I showed you earlier. Like my Yongnuo 50mm 1.8, which we did a review on in this video right here. The lens isn't going to be too much of a weight issue. The DSLR body isn't going to be too much of a weight issue. When you start using telephoto lenses or the really, really long prime lenses, and you got to worry about it being top heavy. Now, one of the things I absolutely will always use a tripod for when I'm doing magazine work is consistency. I don't have to worry about making sure I'm level. I don't have to worry about any of that. So even if I'm in the studio and the lighting is perfect for me to shoot handheld, I'll still use a tripod for a lot of the shots. That way I have consistency. I can take the same photo over and over and over. As we get the pose right, as we get the outfit right, as we move the hair on the model around or anything along those lines, it provides consistency. So the shot is exactly the same every time, and I only have to worry about the subject matter in the shot. So whether I'm moving props or I'm moving the model, the shots will stay consistent. And most all tripods, including that cheapo right there, come with a level. So you can make sure that your camera is level on any surface to get the shot that you want. So as a beginning photographer, I believe that the tripod is one of the most important pieces of equipment that you can purchase to really up your photography game. They're very inexpensive to get started, and they max out in the $2,000 to $5,000 range for some really, really fancy large format tripods made out of like carbon fiber or carbon nanotubes or some kind of alchemy that I have no idea, but I would like one day. So I want to thank everyone for joining me today. Please like, comment, and subscribe. We're going to do a whole series on beginner equipment because it seems to be something that's asked a lot. What kind of lens should I buy? What kind of tripod should I buy? Should I buy a tripod? What would you use for this? What would you use for that? So we're going to do an entire series on equipment for beginner photographers. The next video will be about lenses. We're going to talk about lenses. That'll be a fun video. And at 500 subscribers, I am giving away this jolly look camera. So share the video if you guys enjoyed it and hit the bell notification so you know right when I upload. I know my upload schedule is a little wonky right now. I'm getting used to my new job schedule, so bear with me as I figure it out. Thank you guys again so much for joining me. You have a wonderful evening, and I will catch you on the flip side. Bye.